Um, okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to this series introduction to firewalls, choosing between the two editions. Now that you know about what ISA server can do for you, you may decide to evaluate it further. Pretty soon you will discover that ISA server comes in two editions, the standard edition and the enterprise edition, and you begin to wonder which of these editions is right for me. Because the enterprise edition is considerably more expensive than the standard edition. Examine what you may gain by using the enterprise edition. The enterprise edition can do everything that the standard edition does and more. You should consider the enterprise edition only if you need any of the added functionality that it provides over the standard edition. The enterprise edition can help you bake build servers. You can install ISA server standard edition on a computer that has up to 4 processors. This hardware configuration covers most servers in existence today. However, some large organizations use servers that have 8 or more processors. Microsoft requires that you use the Enterprise Edition on servers with more than 4 processors. Distribute the load. By using ISA Server Enterprise Edition, you can create an array of multiple ISA server computers that automatically distribute the load of client requests among themselves. Although you may be tempted to add more processors to the ISA server computer as the load on your firewall grows, you can often achieve the same increase in performance more efficiently and effectively by creating an array of multiple computers running ISA server. All computers in an array must run ISA Server Enterprise Edition. Manage the work. Array gives you another benefit besides distributing the workload among multiple computers. When you create an ISA server array, all computers in an array work together to perform largely identical tasks. You can also manage all the servers in such an array as a single unit. Doing so saves you a lot of administrative work. Remember that you need the Enterprise Edition to create an array, administer an enterprise. ISA server allows an organization to adopt enterprise policies. An enterprise administrator can use these rules to enforce corporate security policies enterprise-wide and to ensure that all ISA server arrays in the enterprise use these rules. An enterprise administrator can also decide how much leeway an administrator has in augmenting enterprise policies. Enterprise policies apply only to arrays. So to implement enterprise-wide policies, you must use ISA Server Enterprise Edition for all ISA server computers in your organization. Preparing for installation. Installing ISA server is easy. You can insert the CD into your computer's CD-ROM drive, complete the installation wizard within 5 minutes, and the ISA server installation is finished. However, if you haven't planned adequately for your ISA server installation, or if you make incorrect decisions during the installation, you may create a huge security risk for your network. So to help you avoid these situations, take a look at what you should consider before installing ISA server. First, carefully examine your network infrastructure. Will it require arrays, or do you need a single ISA server computer? If you do need arrays, you need to implement Active Directory in your company. Active Directory is Microsoft's directory service. Committing your organization to Active Directory is an issue that you have to assess based on many factors, only some of which are related to ISA server. The implications of implementing Active Directory go beyond the scope of this book, but fortunately, even if you're not ready to move to Active Directory entirely, you can create an Active Directory base domain that contains only your ISA server computers. This allows you to create an ISA server array even before you were ready for an all-out implementation of Active Directory. After you begin using Active Directory in your network, you have to do one more thing. You need to modify the Active Directory schema so that Active Directory can store ISA server data. Although modifying the Active Directory schema for ISA server can be done easily enough, it can have some major implications on your Active Directory and thus your network. Before installing ISA server as an array, make sure that you understand all the implications. You should definitely do a few basic tasks before installing ISA server. Map your network. Make sure that you have a list of all the IP addresses that are used in your network, including those that you will use for future expansion. If your ISP assigned you static IP addresses, create a list that includes the IP addresses or addresses that the ISA server computer uses to connect to the internet. If you use a dial-up connection to connect to the internet, you can skip this step. Finally, if you're planning to use a demilitarized zone, DMZ, create another list of the IP addresses in the DMZ. Install all hardware. Add all the required hardware to the ISA server computer. ISA server requires at least one NIC that's connected to your internal network. This connection to the internet can be another NIC or a modem. You can't use the same NIC to connect to the internet and your internal network if you want to use the firewall functionality of the ISA server. Install Windows 2000 server. Install Windows 2000 server and include only the components that are required. In particular, don't install any of the optional network components or Internet Information Services, IIS. Also check to make sure that Windows 2000 detected all hardware, NICs, modems, and so forth during installation. After you're done installing Windows 2000 server, also install the latest service pack and any critical hotfixes. Your computer should be as secure as possible before you install a firewall on it. Configure TCP IP. Use the networking applet in the control panel to configure the TCP IP settings for all network adapters. Configure the internal adapter with an IP address that is valid on your internal network. If you're connecting to the internet via an NIC, connect that adapter with an IP address that your ISP provided. Configure the default gateway. While using the networking applet in the control panel, and also configure a default gateway. The default gateway is the destination to which a computer sends all IP packets for which it doesn't have a specific route. Because your computer doesn't have routes for any destinations on the internet, you have to ensure that ISA server can forward all packets for external destinations to the internet. Therefore, you should configure a default gateway only for the NIC that you will connect to the internet. Don't configure a default gateway for your internal network adapter. Yes, we know it looks strange to leave this prominent box in the TCP IP properties dialog box empty, but doing so is required in order for ISA server to route packets correctly. Configure the routing table. By default, the default gateway, you have told Windows 2000 how to route packets to the internet. Next, you have to tell Windows 2000 how to route any packets that go to computers on your internal network. If your network contains only one range of network address, such as 192.168.1.0 to 192.168.1.255, then this indicates that Windows 2000 built the required entries when you configure the network adapter that is connected to your internal network. If your internal network contains more than one range of network addresses, you have to add those to the routing table by using the route add command. You can find out more about this command in Windows 2000 Server Online Help. Similarly, if you're using a DMZ, make sure that the routing table contains the entries that are required in order for Windows 2000 to send all packets to the DMZ through the network adapter that is attached to it. You can easily confirm that Windows 2000 Server has the correct routing table entries by opening a command prompt window and typing route print. Figure 6.1 shows what the output of the route print command looks like with an internal network of 192.168.1.0 and the DMZ of 23.10.10.0. Notice that the default gateway is on the same network as the network adapter with the IP address 23.10.10.200. This is the NIC that connects this computer to the internet. So you can see here, this is just a rough output of the route print command. Configure the dial-up connection. If you are connecting to the internet via phone line, you have to configure a dial-up connection. To do this, open the network and dial-up connections item in the control panel and then double-click new connection. Follow the instructions in the network connection wizard to configure the dial-up connection with the telephone number and logon information for your internet service provider. Installing ISA server. Installing ISA server is easy. A setup wizard asks you for a few pieces of information, and when you are finished providing this information, ISA server starts. Be careful during the setup, however, because it's very easy to enter incorrect information, and doing so may compromise your network's security. In this section, you'll learn what to watch out for and how to configure ISA server so that it protects your network the way it's intended. During the installation, ISA server requires several pieces of information. Collect this information before you start the installation. Here is a checklist. CD key. Like many Microsoft products, ISA server requires that you provide the CD key. You can find this 10-digit number on an orange sticker on the back of the ISA server CD case. Cache size and location. ISA server uses a portion of your computer's hard drive for caching web objects that client computers request. Before installing ISA server, make a note of which hard drive has enough space for this cache. The recommended size is 100 MB and another 0.5 MB for each user. You can change the amount of disk space and location after installation, but you should start out with the configuration that works. Make a note of the drive that you will use for caching and how much space you will allocate. You can also spread out the cache over multiple hard drives to allow for efficient cache access and to ensure security. Any drive that you use for caching has to be formatted with the NTFS file system. The local address table, LAT, ISA server uses a table to keep track of all IP addresses that are on the internal network. This table is referred to as the local address table, or LAT. Initially, ISA server builds the LAT based on information that you provide during setup. Misconfiguration of LAT is the worst mistake you can make. The LAT should contain only the addresses on your internal network. If you add any external addresses to your LAT, you will be opening serious security holes. If the LAT doesn't contain all IP addresses, some client computers may not be able to communicate with the internet. Make sure that you have a list of all internal IP addresses when you start the installation of ISA server. When you have gathered all required information, you can start the installation of ISA server. Log on to Windows with an account that is a member of the administrators group. Insert the ISA server CD-ROM. The screen in figure 16.2 appears if it doesn't start the setup program manually from the CD. 3. In the Microsoft ISA server setup screen, click Install ISA server. 4. Click Continue. 5. Type the CD key and then click OK twice. Good thing you made sure you had the CD key before you started. You wouldn't want to start searching for it now while you're in the middle of the installation. 6. Read the license agreement and click I agree. 7. Click the button for the installation type that you want to perform: typical installation, custom installation, or full installation. The typical installation works best in most environments. You have to choose another installation type if you're setting up an H.323 infrastructure to allow users on the internet to connect to users in your network for teleconferencing or voice over IP phone calls, or if you need to install Message Screener, which is an ISA server component that performs filtering of incoming email. You can also use custom installation if you want to install only the administration tool on a computer that isn't running ISA server. If a dialog box appears that informs you that ISA server setup can't join an array, click OK. If you are installing ISA Server Enterprise, you have to prepare Active Directory before creating an array. Because you are installing a standalone server, you can ignore this warning if it appears. 9. In the next dialog box, click Yes to install ISA server as a standalone server. You don't want to join an ISA server array at this point. 10. When the ISA server setup prompts you for the installation mode, ensure that integrated mode is selected and then click OK. Integrated mode gives you both caching of web objects and firewall protection. Integrated mode is the best choice for connecting your network to the internet. Generally, you select a different mode only if you use another firewall or caching server in conjunction with ISA server. If your computer is running Internet Information Services and IIS uses TCP port 80 over or 8080, ISA server setup displays the warning message shown in figure 16.3. The setup program warns you that it is stopping ISS because ISA server uses the same ports as IIS, and services running under Windows can't share the same port. The ISA server setup program only temporarily stops IIS, but IIS will run it again the next time you restart your computer. After the ISA server installation is complete, you should change the ports that IIS is using, or better yet, remove IIS. 11. Click OK to acknowledge that the ISA server setup has stopped your websites. Next, ISA server displays a dialog box with choices for the cache during configuration. You can use multiple cache files, one on each drive. To do so, specify the size of each drive to prevent ISA server from placing a cache file on one of your drives. Simply enter 0 as the size of the cache file on that drive. 12. To configure caching in the dialog box, select the drive that you want ISA server to place the cache file on. Type the size of the cache file and then click Set. When you're done, click OK. ISA server displays a dialog box that prompts you For your internal IP addresses, you can enter these addresses manually or let ISA server create them automatically. When ISA server prompts you to enter your network's internal IP address ranges, click Construct Table to display the dialog box shown in figure 16.4. When you enter the internal address ranges, ISA server creates the LAT. This is what you prepared for by configuring your routing table and noting all internal address ranges. It is important to configure your routing table correctly because ISA server uses this information to create the LAT for you. 14. In the local address table dialog box, check the checkbox to indicate that you want to add addresses from the Windows routing table, and then check the checkbox for the network adapter that is connected to your local network. Don't select any network cards connected to the internet or the DMZ if you're using a private address ranges that ISA server setup refers to for your internal network. You can also check the checkbox that will add these ranges to the LAT. 15. Click OK. A warning message appears prompting you to ensure that the LAT contains the correct addresses. Remember that your LAT should contain all the IP addresses on your local network and not any other IP addresses. 16. Click OK to acknowledge the warning message about the dangers of a misconfigured LAT. ISA server displays the results of the automatic creation of the LAT contents. 17. In the listing of internal IP addresses, confirm that all internal IP addresses are listed and that none of the IP addresses listed are external to your network or in the DMZ. If your routing table was configured before you started the installation, the list of internal IP addresses should be complete. If the list doesn't have the correct entries, you can add or remove entries here. 18. Click OK in the Microsoft Internet Security and Acceleration Setup dialog box. After ISA server setup finishes, you are prompted to run the Getting Started wizard. So I'm going to leave it here this evening for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing and subscribing. Thank you.